Hey everyone, welcome to the Entrepreneur Motivation Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Bello, and today I've got Ivan Rodriguez with me. Ivan, welcome to the show.
Hey, Chris, thanks. I'm happy to be here.
So I'm going to let you do your bio real quick because I had a bio, but I think that you'll be able to fill us in on like what's your background, what are you up to now, and where do you want to go? Just as long as you'd like to go or as short as you like to go.
Yeah, I think I'll keep it somewhat concise because my background is in a multitude of different things. I actually started off in oil and gas and in the refinery, so out in the in the field working as an inspector. So that was about 2-3 years while I worked my way through college. So that's kind of how I paid my way through college. And after I got out of there, um, I went into accounting, so into bookkeeping. Did bookkeeping for a little bit, and then after that, I really found my niche in marketing. So I joined an advertising agency. I was with them for a local one. They're here in Houston. They're called Advertisement Media. They do mainly podcast advertising and local radio advertising. So joined with them and been doing traditional marketing for 3 years, and then transitioned over to another Houston company, Stage Stores, a retail company, and did digital marketing with them for another 3 years. So have done both traditional marketing and digital marketing, got to experience some of the way that we attribute results on the traditional level and the digital way. So some pretty exciting things. That's kind of a quick overview of where I'm at right now.
That's awesome. So I'm very much a fan and a student of marketing as well. I find that it's just interesting to see what do people react to, the subliminal messaging. And it's been a little bit painful to read this book because it's a little older. It's been here for a while. I've read a couple other books, but it's called How to Write a Good Advertisement. And let's see, I think I'm 84 pages in, but it's interesting because it talks a lot about titles and headlines and which ones work and which ones have scarcity factor and stuff, but you really never know until you actually get on that level where you're split testing and going into the numbers. Because right now, a lot of us entrepreneurs, we just guess. We were talking about this when we got on a call like a couple of weeks ago about Facebook ads. Is we just put an ad up, we kind of hope that it works, and then $50 or $100 later, we turn it off if we give up, right? So
yeah, you kind of have to sacrifice a certain number of dollars to figuring it out in Facebook. That's just the way it is.
Exactly. It's kind of like part of the learning curve.
Right. Yeah, because in the beginning in marketing, what you're really doing, especially as an entrepreneur, is you're really trying to capture your baseline, because what measure are you going to, or what number are you going to optimize from?
Right.
And in
when
the
you're
beginning,
starting at zero.
Right. And in the beginning, you'll gather data and you won't know if it's great, if it's bad, if it's in the middle. So it takes a little while.
Yeah. And so you've got to have a little bit of spend. And I think that's like the biggest challenge for people like myself when we're starting is I put in $70. I'm like, is this good? Is this bad? I'm paying $5 a lead or $2 a lead. And then you're not really sure how much to go before pulling the plug or trying something new. And you hear all these things like split testing. I actually had, I think we talked about him 1 or 2 weeks ago. Billy Jean is marketing. He's been on my show, and he was saying that they don't even do any of that split testing stuff. They just go all in on a video ad, and if it works, they know within a day or two if it's going to go well or not, and they kind of go from there. And it's working for them, but I mean, I know that you are on that level where you're looking into different details and split testing and stuff. So what's your main focus now, and what is it that you want to do? Like, if you could have the perfect day every day, like what would you focus on? Like, what's your favorite thing to focus on right now?
If I could have the perfect day, I would be in the beach, focusing on sipping tequila.
Right.
but realistically, in marketing terms, I would be working at a company that has lots of products, lots of spend to really dive into the analytics. That's really what I like about marketing.
Yeah.
Is I do enjoy setting up the campaigns, but more so than that, I like when the results come back and I can analyze and I can see where we could make more money. So that's what I would focus in. And I know a lot of entrepreneurs. I work with a few here in Houston. I have a local digital marketing consultancy that I run with a few partners, and we have a few entrepreneurs that we work with here in Houston, and they say the same thing. They say, I want to get into the data, I want to dig into it, but that's the thing, is that data is, if you don't have enough of it, it's kind of meaningless, and it's hard to
Right.
get to a point. It's hard to get to a point where you have enough data to actually analyze something and dig into it. And a lot of entrepreneurs, especially ones that their businesses are typically less than 1 year old, it's something that they it's hard for them to understand that, like we were talking about earlier, you're going to have to spend some money to get a good mountain of data. So
That's
that's
so true.
that's what I focus in, is really the analytical portion of marketing.
And I'm just thinking back to, like, for numbers and data, for example, when people start anything like a podcast or YouTube channel, if you're looking at the last 3 months, it's not going to be good. It's like 10 downloads the first month, like 12 the second month. Like, the lines look really severe if you get 2 more downloads a month or 1 less the next
Yeah,
month. But then over time, as you get more data, like now I've almost been doing my podcast for 3 years. If I look at the full 3 years, there's like a slow build, and then there's a spike, and then it's like a little bit flat, and then there's a spike again. Like the first January, I started in October 2016 or 17 or something. The first January was like 124. The next January was at 19,000, and then the following January was 38,000. So it looks like, whoa, how did you get there?
yeah,
But man, those little peaks and valleys, right? So it takes time and data, and I think that is something really interesting that you brought up, that in an ideal world, you get to have all this spend behind you. Because most entrepreneurs,
right,
it's like, we don't got that spend when we're starting off.
yeah,
It's like putting it on the credit card, spend
yeah.
$20, and then you're like, oh, it's getting too high. I haven't gotten a lead yet. Whereas if you actually have a legit marketing budget, you can play a lot more with the ads and the campaigns and stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the way that we handle that scenario that most new entrepreneurs are in is that, since they don't have, years of data to compare against, we'll just narrow their comparison windows. Instead of looking at data year over year, or in some cases quarter over quarter, we'll say, well, let's say you've been running your marketing campaigns for about a month or two. I think that's it. That's enough time to really get a really good gauge of how you're doing, and definitely enough time to have your baselines established. So we really help them look at week over week and try to identify. We do split testing, so we are a fan of split testing.
That's good.
um,
No, I
Try
mean,
to
if you're a
identify.
pro, like, go ahead and do it. I think like a lot of people need to just outsource that to someone who's credible and can do that, because if there's so many full-time jobs when you're an entrepreneur, you can't wear all the
Right.
hats, right? If I'm a real estate expert, or at least I'm branding myself that way, I can't also be like a pro split tester and go to the gym every day and meal prep. Like, there's things I have to let go of, right? So I think that's where it comes in really handy, that that's your specialty. And so, yes, go ahead and split test. Like, that is your main focus. How do you
Yeah,
split test your campaigns when you're running them? Do you do like A/B, or do you do multiple?
we do A/B testing. Let's say, for example, that we're running a Facebook campaign. We have the campaign, and every time we do an ad, if we're in the discovery phase, every single time, if let's say we want to figure out what copy, and copy is what we call, the description of the ad.
Mm-hmm.
If we want to figure out what copy generates higher engagement, or what images generate higher engagement, then yes, we would split test every single time. Once we have 4 to 5 campaigns, 4 to 5 ads that we could say, we ran this type of ad 4 different times, 5 different times, and each one of those times, image A did better, had higher engagements than image B, then we feel pretty confident in saying image A is the way to go. After
Okay.
you can replicate that success at least 4 times, I would say that right there gives you your answer. And in the future, you can develop images that are similar to image A's.
Sorry, when you say
Yeah.
4 times, do you mean like 4 times the success rate for A versus B? Like 4 times more people are clicking through image A? Is that what you mean?
No, no, no. What I mean is, you ran your ad, let's say, for 2 weeks, right?
Okay.
So that was one test. That's one time. That's what I meant by time. And then
Ooh,
you'll
okay.
run a separate ad for another 2 weeks with the similar image that's similar to image A and similar to image B, if that makes kind of sense. So you'll run, in essence, let's say that we have an ad that's running for 2 weeks. You'll run 2 weeks, and then you'll run another 2 weeks and another and another. And that would give you enough time to say these 4 different ads.
Okay. So 4 2-week sessions, right?
Right. And then these 4 different ads they're all separate images, but they have similar elements. For example, it'll show a person, it'll have less text. It will be an image of a person. It will be an image of a product. You could set up the ways that you want to categorize your ads, but that's kind of how you get a good idea of what your audience resonates to. Is you kind of have your categories that you're going to test, and you test them out, and after you can replicate success, then and that's kind of what we do with the entrepreneurs. Is we test for about a month or 2, and then we could say definitively, your ads should sound like this, your ads should look like this.
So once they determine which ones are the right images and the right copy, do they go all in on that ad until it stops performing? Like they kind of just let it run as long as possible?
Yes, they do. And then where we go from there is instead not testing the ad content, but what we go from there is testing some of the targeting settings. So testing the audiences that you're shooting it to, and then from there we test the time of day. From there we test whether it's on a mobile device or on a browser. And you just go down the rabbit hole of what works best. What's going to save me the most dollars.
Well, because I've done a little bit of looking at ads that I've run, and it's interesting to see the numbers where, like 70% of females like opened up the ad on their mobile phone, and then like X amount opened it in Instagram and stuff. So it kind of gives me ideas and thinking like, okay, so this kind of image catered towards this audience or demographic. And so I kind of try to target. Well, for real estate, for example, I think we talked about this on the call a few weeks ago too, is like, since it's a special category, I can't necessarily just target 30 to 40 year olds. Right. And it has to be more like 18 to like everybody basically.
Right. It's more
18 and up.
You can't really set those targeting settings.
Yeah. So I'm like, man, I don't know if I'm going to market to an 18-year-old who doesn't even have her first car, or like to a 65-year-old who owns 10 properties and is more of like the person I'm trying to market to. So I guess it's interesting to see the different categories and stuff depending on what it is you're focusing on. So let's see. I'm going to pull up the notes that we talked about too, because we said we'll talk about some of the basic stuff and then we can dive into some of the complex stuff. So establishing your metrics, we have to get a baseline. Is there anything else on the basic side that you wanted to touch on or highlight, like tips that people should be aware of?
I feel like most entrepreneurs will get the basics pretty quickly, fairly quickly, establish your baseline, reduce your reporting time frame. So don't, you could look at week over week. It's okay to compare this week to last week and really test as much as you can. But if you don't have the spend to test every single ad, that's fine. If you feel like something's working, you will gather the data eventually, and having exposure is better than having no exposure. So
yeah, it's better to put something out there. And I feel like there's a friend who posted, another podcasting friend, and I saw he posted this on his story today, something about how to stop procrastinating or how to just do something. And it reminded me of something that I believe in called like done is better than perfect. So I'd rather put out something that's imperfect, that's doing something, like try to make an ad and just put it out there, and you don't know if it's going to work or not until you do. And that's better than like sitting back and reading Facebook ad strategy for 2 years. And then by the time you're done, like the algorithms and everything's all changed, right? It's like you read the wrong book and you spent too much time and now everything's different. Or people are on TikTok or whatever the new platform is that's becoming more popular.
Yeah, I agree. And so I completely agree, and I think the basics, that's probably as much as we could go into it, or not could, but probably should go into it. I feel like, a lot of people can figure out how to go about marketing fairly quickly after they start, running a few things. Yeah,
for sure. So in terms of the complex stuff that we can dive into, I know there's a rabbit hole, of things to learn. So we don't have to go like too crazy technical, but some of the things I have here are like the difference in digital attribution methods.
Right. So we could talk about that. That's that's a really good one, and one that I think applies to business owners that are starting to maybe you hired an agency, and they're showing you numbers that look great, that look awesome, but you're not really seeing the spike in your sales that the agency is showing you. So one of the reasons that could create that disconnect is maybe you're looking at the wrong attribution method or attribution path. One that is fairly common that it's the one that's been around the longest and people are starting to get away from is called last touch attribution. And that really, what that does is, if you, let's say you're marketing in Google and you're marketing in Facebook and you're marketing, you have display ads also going through Google. So you have three channels, right? Your display, your paid search, and your Facebook. So what last touch attribution, the way it works is that it attributes the dollars, the revenue earned from an ad click or from an ad sell to the last channel that was in the attribution path. So let's say you saw a display ad. You're browsing through the internet. You saw a display ad for shoes, and you're like, I think I might buy those shoes, right? And you go about your web search, and then later on in the day, you do a Google search for that retailer that sold those shoes that you were looking for, right? Well, an ad will come up on Google, so you'll click on that ad and you'll make the purchase.
Like one of the ads at the very top.
Right. So what the analytics of that will tell you is that you made a sell through the search ad. So you're going to say, oh, my search ads are doing great and my display ads not
Aren't
so much
doing
because
great. Oh, that's
right.
tricky. Because it could have been the display ad that made them Google it later, but you don't really know, right?
Right. So that's kind of how attribution methods work. So there's a few different ones, and I'll just talk about two so we don't get too technical, which is
Okay.
the one that is the standard default. And that's the one that I was talking about, the last touch. So everything that is set up, if you go to Google, which Google can do display, can do paid search, which I don't recommend doing everything out of Google, but it can do that if that's your only option. So the standard method would be last click. So what a lot of the businesses are trying to get away from is that attribution method and going into something called multi-touch, where it will give a certain weight percentage to each channel. So if a person comes in through an email, right, you send out an email, and then they buy through Google or through a display, and let's say that sale was $10, right? Well, you'll give email a certain percentage of credit of that sale, if that makes sense. So you'll give them $2. They get $2 credit. They made $2. They helped this sale happen, right? So you'll give them a little percentage of that sale. So that way, when you're looking at your analytics for all of your different marketing channels, you'll get a clearer picture of, this person first went through an email, then went through a display ad, and then went through something else. So those three channels get a little bit of credit. And usually the last channel gets the most credit, but the first ones are not at zero, if that makes sense.
That's cool. Okay. So that way you give a little bit of credit to, because I know marketing, it takes 7 touches or whatever the number is, 7 to 12 touches before someone buys. And so I think that's why it's so important to do everything. People use pixels and then retarget and do email advertising, and you don't know, it's all building up. And then finally that person's like, okay, I'm just going to buy it. I'm going to buy those shoes or whatever it is that they've been seeing. It is funny because I always see my girlfriend do it where she's like, she doesn't want to buy it because she doesn't want to be impulsive. But then like 3 days later, she's like, okay, I bought it. And she's like, oh, I deserve it. She justifies it and then orders it. And maybe she sees the Instagram ad again. And that's when she's like, I think I'm going to buy it.
So definitely for businesses that are advertising in different channels, attribution methods, it's something that they need to pay attention to, because it's very easy to assume that one marketing channel is carrying all of your marketing sales, all of your ad sales,
Yeah.
And that may not be the case.
Interesting. And since I'm more in that like relationship business and getting referrals and stuff, I haven't really done as much advertising yet. I've done a few ads and then like the leads that I've talked to aren't always qualified or they're not really motivated or whatever. Sometimes people just submit a form, especially the Facebook lead forms. They just like click through it on accident or
Mhm.
something because they're like, oh, I didn't mean to do that or whatever. And so it's just interesting to see based on like the type of business that you have. But here, let's see, what about the importance of first and third party audiences?
So this again is something that unfortunately doesn't really apply to you because of
Yeah,
that
man, I need to
bucket
get into
that
e-com or something,
yeah.
like it's so weird for me to do advertising, but I mean, when I'm trying to track my lead sources, that's what I was going to say on the last point is like, I try to see what's giving me the best leads. Is it messaging friends and then replying to stories about people moving and asking like, why are you moving? Oh, you're going to sell your house? Cool. Lead. Like it's just asking questions. But yeah, let's talk about the first and third party audiences. Sorry for
Yeah,
interrupting.
yeah. So I think when you get to be a bigger business, you'll accumulate your database of customers, right? So you have customer information. You'll have their names, their emails, addresses, things like that. So what a first party audience is getting some of these emails that you have from your email list and importing them into your platform like Facebook or Google or Adobe if you're using that one, and hitting those people that way. So it gets a little tricky doing this if you don't have a digital footprint of that person. So the easiest way that you could capture your first party audience pool is by putting a pixel on your site, right? Or putting
Yeah.
a remarketing pixel that captures these people that visit and is able to market to them at a later time. So that's the easiest way to really build it up. If you have a database, there's ways you can connect your database to the platforms. It gets a little bit complicated, but that's totally doable. So that's what first party audience is. It's the people, it's the data, the people that you acquired yourself, right?
Like people on your email list or that you pixel?
Right,
Okay.
exactly. And third party are the people that you're advertising to that you didn't directly acquire yourself. So that could be, when you're looking on Facebook and you're putting, I want to see people who have an interest in weddings or people who
Oh,
have an
okay.
interest in
Similar
things.
interests and stuff.
So those are third party audiences because they're not your audiences, right? So there's different ways you can get them. You could go through the platforms and just target them there. There's a bunch of them there,
Yeah.
and another way is that you could buy lists. And there's not a lot of companies that do that. Generally, the companies that do buy lists, they tend to be larger in scale. For example, whenever I worked at Stage Stores, we wanted to target our competitor was Kohl's, right? So Kohl, people who would shop at Kohl's. So we bought lists that included people who were Kohl's shoppers, and
Hmm.
then we would show them ads to try to, get them to convert and come over to our store. So
Okay.
that's kind of some of the uses for third party, So even though first party is what's right there and what's available, and it's really great that you utilize that, it's probably the best use. Third party is really comes in when you're trying to get those new users.
Yeah, new customers. That's kind of similar to what a lot of people do with real estate. There's sites, I don't know what kind of site or where you would buy the lists for like Kohl's shoppers. But like listsource.com, they've got a variety of lists for whoever's listening. If you go to listsource.com, I use them for some real estate stuff. I know a lot of people use them, and you can filter for all kinds of data. Like I can find it may be more heavily geared towards real estate. I can't remember. I haven't been there in a while since I've left the investing side, more for the retail side on the real estate stuff. But it would give you like name, the owner. You could filter if they've got like a low mortgage and bad credit score, like all kinds of data. I don't know how they get it or how
Wow.
accurate it is, but it's pretty impressive. And then you can target when you're finding motivated sellers, for example, in real estate, you want to find people who've got bad credit, they've got delinquent taxes, they have equity in the house, so they're willing to sell it for a low price. And then you do Facebook ads or cold calling or ringless voicemails and direct mail. I mean, you just get in front of those people and that's your target market. So I think that's kind of similar. That's what you just said reminded me of like third party where you don't know them, they don't know you, but they may be potential clients or customers or whatever down the road.
Yeah. And I think you touched on a good subject there when you were talking about, some of the information, some of the data points that you get when you purchase these lists.
How
You're saying
accurate
you
are
get
they?
one is how accurate are they, and then two, you were saying you get names and things like that. So I think it's important to clear up that whenever you get to buying millions of records and stuff, there are some privacy concerns involved with that. And whenever you get to
Exactly.
do it whenever you get to do it on that large of a scale, it's all of the data is hashed, meaning you can't really extrapolate it and get names or get addresses, and it's all there. And the ones who can use that data are the platforms like Google and Facebook, but the
Oh, okay.
individual person
Can't get
doesn't
it.
have access to look at Joe and where he lives and all that. So
Yeah, there's ways. I know how to get a hold of people and like find them and look up their numbers and find their cell and their landline and stuff.
yeah.
So there's all these sneaky ways, but I mean, people don't want to be found, and of course, like you said, there's some security things on there too. Like, I mean, I've had people where I tried cold calling and texting and stuff, and it's just so much harder. Even if they want to do business with me, the fact that I just cold call them or text them pisses them off so much that they don't want to do business with me. Usually, I mean, it's a numbers
Yeah.
game. If you get 100 FUs, then maybe the next person will actually work with you. But it's so much easier with like a referral or something, for me at least, where it's like, okay, cool, we're working together because so and so said that they trust me, so now you're going to trust me.
And that's another great, point that you're making, because in marketing with first and third party audiences, that's really how it works as well. Is
Right.
the
It's like
people
a word of mouth,
who know
right?
you, yeah, the people who've gone to your website, the people who are signed up on your email list, they're always going to be higher converting than the people you're trying
Yes.
to go after. It's just the way it is.
Yes, yes. I heard something pretty amazing where, well, it was something about how not all your clients are equal and you can fire your customer. Some funny meme was like, it's the best feeling ever when you fire like a terrible client or a customer. You don't have to say yes to everybody. If someone's going to devalue you and want a discount and never refer people to you, like, why would you want to continue putting yourself through that just for a little more money? It feels way better when you narrow down your scope depending on your business. I mean, if you're like a service-based industry, it's amazing when you have clients that you actually like, that appreciate your work, and they value your services. They don't try to ask for a discount, because we all have those moments where we feel like people are just trying to nickel and dime you, and then even when you give an inch, they take a mile, and then they don't even appreciate you. They don't leave the 5-star review, like anything at the end, right? So I think it's important to focus on that for sure. All right, cool. So yeah, like what we were talking about, just picking clients. You don't have to have every single person who pays you. You can like fire clients if they don't make sense for you and stuff. What about managing ads for multiple locations? What do you mean by that? Like different locations across the US or the world, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So, this gets more to, for example, one of the entrepreneurs I work with, this is a good example for him because he has 3 furniture stores here in Houston. And one's about in North Houston, one is in Southwest, and another one is really far out east. So they're not that close to each other, when looking at the Houston map. So what he likes to do, or what we should suggested, is that he target his marketing to about a 5-mile radius, because he's a small store, right? He's not getting tons of heavy traffic into the brick and mortar store. So he really wants to narrow down that geographical location that he's targeting, to kind of create a bubble around his store and be hitting all of those people in those areas. So he's not really wasting his money advertising to people in downtown who are not going to make the drive out, far east of Houston for a furniture store where they could go somewhere else, right? So the way that you go about that is, there's different ways, but it just, I guess with that point, what I wanted to say is just be mindful of the different locations that you have. And what I see a lot of people do is, they'll have, for example, using the same client of mine, he has 3 stores. They're all technically in Houston, but they're pretty far away from each other. So if he just sets the targeting to the city of Houston,
Yeah, it's not going to be optimized. He's going to be wasting a lot of advertising to people who won't come to the store. That's
Yeah.
interesting. It reminds me of one of my friends. I interviewed him on my show, Safir. He has this company called Hamper where they've got kiosks. They do like dry cleaning and wash and fold laundry, delivery and pickup. But they've got little kiosks. It's basically like a red box of laundry and dry cleaning. And they did the similar thing where they've got kiosks in certain office buildings across town. And they made a little bubble, like a radius around each one, where everyone who's kind of in the vicinity can come and drop off their laundry and sign up to be a new customer or whatever. But it's that thing where they're not going to market to someone way north in Houston if all their kiosks are downtown, because no one's going to drive 30 minutes south to drop off laundry when there's like 500 dry cleaners on the way, right? So that definitely helps to stretch your dollar, I would imagine.
Yeah, and it's something that, you know, some entrepreneurs they try, you know, to what you were saying earlier, is they don't have the time to be managing, you know, each location separately, and so just to be mindful, you know, be mindful of where you're spending your money and where you're targeting geographically. And again, using this client of mine as an example, he runs different promotions in different stores.
Let's see, what else do we have on my notes here? We've got scaling without burning your ad budget. So
I think we covered some of that. It just really goes down to targeting, you know?
Yeah, the more refined you are, the better.
Right. Yeah, the more refined you are, and then really know your audience, know what resonates well with your audience. And the only way to know that, other than by asking them, you know, with filling out surveys or gathering that type of data, the only other way to know what resonates with them is, you know, trial and error with ads, you know?
Yeah.
Capturing data and seeing what resonates well, what has higher clicks, what has higher engagement, what has higher return on ad spend. That's really, once you have those values defined, you know, what should be my cost per acquisition? How much money do I need to spend to get a new customer? So once you have these metrics defined, I think you're at the right time to scale, but you should not scale if you don't know what your cost per acquisition is.
Right.
If you
the
don't
lifetime
know,
value of your customer and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah, because all that's a guessing game usually at first. I'm like, I don't know. I'm just going to put $500 in and maybe I'll get a lead. And if I close a deal, it works.
Yeah.
It depends on all that. I know what I hear one marketer that I follow, his name's Miles Beckler. I don't know if you've ever listened to his podcast or anything, but he says that like the cost of a yoga studio to get one lead does not equal, like it's not as valuable as it is for a real estate agent to get a lead, because they get way more money. It's a higher ticket item. So a real estate agent would be willing to spend way more money to get ads than a yoga person would to get someone who pays $100 a month, just because it's a higher, maybe not necessarily like a lifetime value, but like that one-time thing really pays a lot more faster.
Yeah, and a good example of that is in the past, I worked with, in the advertising agency field, I worked with an insurance company that their CPCs in paid search were about close to $100 a click. So if you think of CPCs, you know, they tend to be somewhat low, depending on your industry, but
yeah, I mean, I've seen like $3, $4 maybe,
right,
like cheaper. So $100 per click, dang.
Yeah, because if they get that person, you know, they're just making a ton of money on it. So some for insurances, you know, their prices go up pretty high,
right? But
they're okay with them, you know, because they make money off of it.
I've heard the same thing with like solar. They advertise a lot because if they can get a client, they get paid. They have financing and stuff for solar panels for like 30 years. So they're making money on an interest or whatever for that amount of time. That's what one friend was telling me.
That customer, it's just really, really high. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's interesting stuff, man. Did we miss anything? Is there anything else you wanted to cover in terms of the online marketing and targeting and things to focus on?
No, I think, you know, what I'm glad that you got me on your show. You know, I'm really happy to be here. This is the first time that I've been interviewed and have had the opportunity to really express some of these things. And,
it's just fun to talk about it. I mean, you know this stuff and you just get to talk about it, and then I learn it, and then I just share it with my audience, and then they learn it. So it's good.
So that's what I intended, coming into it. And I think that some of those talking points that we touched on was just trying to highlight little bits of marketing and how the complexity can build as you get bigger. But you take it one step at a time. You capture your data, you capture insight on your audience, and you're gonna get there. So I think we touched on a lot of good points.
We did. Do you have any resources or books or anything that you recommend? I mean, I've heard that like facebook.com/ads has a lot of good stuff too, something like that.
That's what I was going to say. I think because there's a lot of resources out there, but I think the number one type of resource that has helped me out, especially, starting out learning digital marketing. And so for my clients, what helps them out is really taking the time to go through the training courses that Facebook has to use their platform, or the training courses that Google has to use their platform. These are free courses that, the people at
from
Facebook.
the horse's mouth, right?
Right. And obviously they invested heavily in these courses so people can use their products and spend their money and all that.
Right. Because the more successful you are, the more you're going to spend, the more money they're going to make as well. So,
so if you're someone who really, your knowledge of digital marketing is very entry, these are free resources that are structured like classes. So, you could take bits and pieces of them whenever you have time, and they'll really get you up to speed. And they'll get you to a point where you can start your marketing and feel confident in what you're doing and comfortable in what you're doing. And then if things get too complex, you can, reach out to an expert or something, but that will really give you the basic knowledge that you need to get started and not be completely lost or, out in the woods.
Awesome. So if you had to give one takeaway or one piece of advice for people to really listen to and take to heart today, what would it be?
I think it would just be pay close attention to your data. I know it takes time to go through the numbers and to analyze them, and you have actual operational things to take care of with your business, but go through the data, because that's where all the answers lie.
Yeah. Well, I guess I remember hearing another quote too, because I worked in supply chain in a big oil and gas company, and literally I would look at like the last 3 years of data and export it, and it was like 100,000 lines literally, and I had to like make sense of it. So if you have data but you don't know how to work with it, it doesn't paint the picture. It's just numbers. So if you know some basic stuff like in Excel, like creating a pivot table, and these are all things people can Google and figure out, but I definitely recommend creating like some pivot tables, highlighting some different trends. You can filter for really cool things like trend by year, by month, by quarter, and then even attach graphs and stuff to it, so you can paint a picture with the numbers of how things are trending. And there are other dashboards and tools as well out there, depending on what you're using. Like with my podcast dashboard, it does all that for me. But okay, so look into the data. And where can people reach out to you if you're taking on new clients, or if you have any resources or anything online? Is there like a good website or social media handle or anything you want to put down?
I'm still getting into social media, and
it's funny because you're like the Facebook ads guy.
Aside from my personal stuff, I want to get one dedicated to my business, but or at least my Ivan Rodriguez, the business Ivan Rodriguez, not the personal one. But but no, people can reach out to me on my website, which is mediarunner.biz. And they could shoot me an email at ivan@mediarunner.biz.
Okay, awesome. Mediarunner.biz, B-I-Z. I'll go ahead and put that all in the show notes, as well as the email address you shared. And then people can reach out to you, get a hold of you, and, maybe work with you if it makes sense. And if they don't want to spend all the time figuring it all out, I mean, that's what you do. And that's why you're the professional in that space. So I definitely recommend to everyone who's listening as well. You don't have to be doing everything in your business. Like, I'm trying to outsource as much of the things that I don't want to do as I can, like even meal prepping and stuff. I'm thinking about ordering meals. Like I told my girlfriend this earlier, I'm too fast to delegate everything, where sometimes I should probably learn the basics, because then I can't really manage it because I don't know if it's getting done right. So that may be good advice for people listening too, is just maybe try it out on your own, learn a little bit. And then when you're ready to scale up and get to the next level, talk to someone like Ivan or, another expert that who's familiar with Facebook ads and marketing, and then go from there.
Yeah. That you're spot on. That's great.
Awesome. And just always work on improving too, because I know you can't be good at everything right away. It just takes time to grow. So, well, Ivan, it was awesome having you on the show. But hey, this was a solid interview, a lot of good information. And I mean, especially for the people listening, like I'm sure they listened all the way through. Whoever listened, you are awesome. Thank you. And make sure to leave a review and let us know what you thought of this episode on Apple Podcasts or on YouTube.
All right. Thanks.
Cool.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Ivan.